In the stillness of the plains, the land seems empty, just grass, wind, and horizon. But centuries ago, what looked like open earth was alive with hidden homes. Entire families lived beneath your feet, their shelters concealed so perfectly that even a traveler could pass within yards and never notice. These were the invisible dwellings of Native America, earth lodges and pit houses that blended seamlessly into the terrain, protecting their people from the cold, from storms, and from enemies who never knew they were there. This was not camouflage born of fear. It was architecture built from understanding, structures shaped by land, not imposed upon it. The earth itself became the outer wall, insulating warmth in winter and coolness in summer. The roofs, covered with sod and grasses, grew back into the landscape as if nothing had ever been disturbed. Even the entrances, faced with precision, aligned to the path of the sun and shielded from prevailing winds. To outsiders, these homes seemed to vanish. To their builders, they were exactly where they belonged. It was a kind of mastery that required no blueprints, only a lifetime of observation. What settlers mistook for simplicity was, in truth, one of the most advanced architectural ideas in history: invisibility as strength. Today, as cities sprawl and technology strains to outsmart nature, we can still look back and find genius in the ground beneath us. These ancient builders proved that the best shelter isn't the one that stands out, it's the one that endures. Because every hidden home carried a lesson that modern architecture is only beginning to rediscover. Subscribe now, because every day we bring history back to life, revealing the forgotten designs that shaped how humanity truly survived. Picture a traveler crossing the high plains at dusk. The horizon burns gold, the grass sways like waves, and yet, beneath that calm surface, an entire village rests unseen. Smoke curls so faintly, it's mistaken for fog. The traveler rides on, unaware that life hums quietly below the soil. To early outsiders, these hidden settlements seemed impossible. Where were the homes? Where were the people? What they could not see were the earth lodges and pit houses buried within the contours of the land itself. From above, they looked like gentle mounds, indistinguishable from the rolling terrain. Entrances faced away from the wind, roofs lay flush with the ground, and the surrounding vegetation grew back naturally, erasing any sign of disturbance. These dwellings didn't announce their presence. They dissolved into it. This invisibility wasn't a trick of secrecy alone. It was deliberate design, rooted in a need to endure harsh climates and remain protected from both the elements and potential threats. By building downward instead of upward, communities shielded themselves from freezing winds and summer heat. What appeared to be an empty field was, in truth, a network of homes. Warm, ventilated, and secure. The genius of these disappearing dwellings lies in what they revealed: a deep grasp of how terrain, temperature, and light interact. Long before camouflage uniforms or stealth technology, these builders had already perfected a different kind of invisibility, one that worked through patience, not machinery. To walk over such a site today is to walk above history that chose not to stand tall. It chose to endure quietly. And in that quiet, it still teaches us that real permanence doesn't always rise skyward. It sometimes hides, waiting to be rediscovered. The invisible shelter began long before the first pole was placed in the ground. It started with reading the land, listening to its patterns of wind, sunlight, and soil. Builders walked the terrain for days, sometimes weeks, before choosing the exact spot. A dip in the earth could mean protection from storms. A southern slope meant warmth in winter. Every decision was guided by precision, not chance. Once the site was chosen, the construction unfolded like a dialogue between people and landscape. Instead of clearing land, they shaped around it. A shallow pit was dug to anchor the base, framed with wood, and layered with branches and sod. The walls didn't rise above the horizon. They curved back into it. From a distance, the finished home looked like another hill or ridge, complete with grass, roots, and soil thriving atop it. Materials were chosen not for decoration, but for their ability to blend. Earth, clay, straw, and wood were all gathered from within walking distance, matching the color and texture of the surroundings. When rain fell, the roof absorbed it just as the ground did. When the wind blew, the contour deflected it naturally. No part of the structure drew attention. Everything served to erase its presence. Even the light inside was planned with subtlety. A central opening allowed smoke to escape while letting in a soft, diffused glow. During the day, shadows folded across the interior in steady rhythm, maintaining warmth without glare. To an outsider, these shelters seemed to vanish. To those who built them, they weren't hidden. They were perfectly placed. Their mastery wasn't about concealment. It was about precision, so complete that visibility simply ceased to matter. What remained was balance between protection, comfort, and the quiet art of disappearing. The invisibility of these shelters was not born from fear or secrecy. It was the outcome of practical genius. Their hidden nature served as protection, yes, but it also achieved something far more remarkable: perfect environmental balance. By sinking homes into the earth or covering them with soil and grass, native builders created natural insulation that required no firewood beyond what daily life already provided. In winter, the thick earth walls absorbed warmth from a single central hearth, storing heat and releasing it slowly through the night. In summer, those same walls shielded the interior from the punishing sun, keeping temperatures steady. Even water runoff followed nature's logic. The sloping roof redirected rain harmlessly away from the living space, nourishing the surrounding soil instead of eroding it. These structures didn't resist the environment, they used its forces with silent precision. Inside, every inch of space was designed for function. The hearth sat at the center, both as a heat source and gathering place. Sleeping platforms rose slightly off the ground for dryness and comfort. Storage pits were built below, maintaining cool temperatures for food preservation. Smoke holes doubled as vents, allowing airflow without losing heat. From above, the structure vanished. From within, it felt alive, responsive to weather, terrain, and the rhythm of daily living. What we now call passive design and sustainable architecture were not innovations. They were common sense for the people who built these homes. The practicality of the invisible shelter reminds us that simplicity, when guided by understanding, can achieve sophistication that modern technology still struggles to match. These dwellings didn't flaunt progress. They embodied it quietly. While others built walls against the world, these builders created a home that belonged to it, strong, efficient, and enduring beyond the eyes that sought to see it. To create a shelter that vanished into the land required more than skill. It demanded calculation. Every curve, every supporting beam, every layer of soil served a purpose that modern engineers would later define with formulas. These builders didn't have measuring tools or schematics. Their precision came from experience, refined through centuries of trial, observation, and adaptation. The frame was the heart of the design. Builders selected sturdy central posts from trees known for their flexibility: ash, cottonwood, or young oak. These posts formed the skeleton, rising just enough to shape a gentle dome rather than a sharp roof. Around them, smaller ribs were bent inward and tied together, distributing pressure evenly from the center to the ground. This shape allowed snow and wind to move smoothly across the surface, reducing wear and stress. Then came the layering, the invisible engineering that made these homes nearly indestructible. Grass, reeds, and branches were laid in alternating directions, creating natural insulation. A thick coating of earth pressed over the top not only camouflaged the structure, but stabilized temperature inside. The weight was calculated by instinct. Too little, and the roof wouldn't insulate. Too much, and the frame would buckle. Yet collapse was rare. Ventilation was another masterpiece of balance. A central opening vented smoke while maintaining steady airflow, creating warmth without stifling heat. Even placement of this vent was deliberate, angled to the prevailing wind so that smoke lifted instead of swirling back inside. To outsiders, these dwellings seemed primitive, but in reality, they were self-regulating systems. Homes that adjusted naturally to the weather without a single moving part. The brilliance of their concealment wasn't just in appearance, it was in performance. They disappeared from sight because, in every sense, they belonged entirely to the land that built them. What made these shelters truly extraordinary wasn't visible at all. Their strength came from what was buried, foundations that merged stability with protection in ways modern builders still study. By digging downward instead of stacking upward, native builders transformed the earth itself into structure and shield. The soil became both wall and insulation, holding steady through temperature swings that would have destroyed exposed cabins. A pit house might descend 3 or 4 feet below ground, lined with woven branches or planked wood. The depression acted like a natural thermal battery, storing daytime warmth and releasing it through the night. When fierce winds swept across the plains, they passed harmlessly overhead. Rain pooled and drained around the mound, never breaching its sealed walls. Even the pressure of snow, which crushed weaker roofs, pressed down evenly and reinforced the shelter's compact design. This hidden strength extended to daily life. Underground acoustics softened every sound, muffling conversations and movement from a distance. For communities vulnerable to raids, this discretion could mean survival. Yet these homes weren't dark or oppressive. The central hearth provided both heat and light, while carefully placed vents kept air fresh and dry. Over time, the surrounding grass grew over the roof again, stitching the house back into the land. From a distance, it was indistinguishable from the terrain. Beneath that quiet surface, entire families cooked, worked, and rested in steady comfort while storms raged outside. The settlers, who later built towering cabins, never understood how such modest dwellings endured while their own structures failed. They looked for grandeur. The native builders looked for endurance. In the contest between visibility and resilience, it was the unseen that triumphed. To those who built them, the invisible shelters were more than homes. They were safeguards. In uncertain times, when neighboring groups clashed or explorers wandered too close, invisibility itself became a strategy. The low profiles of earth lodges and pit houses meant that, from a distance, they blended into the land like quiet shadows. A traveler could cross a ridge and see nothing but untouched terrain, unaware that a community rested just beyond sight. Defense began with positioning. Builders avoided open plains and high ground where smoke or movement could be spotted. Instead, they chose hollows near water or dense vegetation, where natural contours shielded their settlements. Entrances faced inward toward communal areas or followed paths hidden by brush. Even fires, though central to living, were carefully managed, burned with hardwoods that produced minimal smoke, vented through angled openings to scatter traces before they reached the sky. This invisibility wasn't isolation, it was protection through restraint. Rather than fortify with walls or weapons, they relied on distance, silence, and the cooperation of terrain. A well-placed village could thrive for generations without being discovered by outsiders. Children grew up playing in meadows that outsiders thought were empty. Traders and hunters returned to camps no enemy could ever find twice. Even the structure's materials played a role in defense. Earthen roofs absorbed the echo of footsteps. Thick soil muffled voices. If danger approached, families could vanish inside within seconds, the entrance sealed by a woven mat or stone slab. To modern eyes, this might seem like concealment, but to its builders, it was intelligence. A design that understood safety didn't always come from standing tall. Sometimes, the surest protection is to be exactly where you are, unseen, while the world passes by unaware. When the cold set in, most shelters of the world relied on fire alone. But the invisible dwellings of Native America, pit houses and earth lodges, mastered warmth and coolness through structure, not struggle. Long before furnaces or fans, these builders created self-regulating homes that required almost no effort to keep comfortable year-round. The secret was balance between earth, air, and heat. The partially sunken design placed living spaces beneath the frost line, where temperatures remained steady even during blizzards. Thick walls of soil and sod absorbed warmth from a single central hearth, releasing it slowly through the night. The air inside never froze, and even during howling storms, the interior stayed calm. No drafts, no rattling timbers, no smoke clogging the air. In summer, the same principle reversed. The cool earth surrounding the home pulled heat away naturally, while narrow vents allowed warm air to rise and escape. The dome shape promoted circulation without mechanical help, creating a silent exchange of air that kept interiors several degrees cooler than the outside world. The builders didn't fight the weather. They anticipated it. Even the hearth acted as more than a fire pit. Its placement was mathematical. Dead center, where heat radiated evenly to every wall. Above it, the smoke hole doubled as a thermal valve, opening to release excess heat or closing to trap warmth. To modern engineers, these principles read like textbook examples of passive energy control. Yet, they were achieved centuries before such terms existed. These homes didn't demand constant maintenance or energy. They maintained themselves through proportion and placement. Step inside one today, and you'd feel it instantly. Steady air, even warmth, and silence that hums with purpose. The people who built them didn't design for luxury. They designed for endurance, and in doing so, achieved both. Before building began, there was listening. Builders studied the terrain the way a reader studies a page. Every rise, shadow, and wind pattern carried meaning. The land spoke in contours and clues, and those clues decided everything: where to dig, how deep to anchor, and which direction the doorway should face. This wasn't decoration, it was translation. Each shelter was the land retelling itself in human form. In low valleys, where wind gathered, they found calm air beneath the ridges. Near rivers, they avoided soft soil that could flood and instead chose higher ground, shaped by centuries of gentle erosion. The slope of a hill wasn't an obstacle, but a design feature. Builders used its lean to brace the roof, using weight and gravity as part of the plan. Materials came next. If the soil was sandy, they added clay for strength. If it was rich and heavy, they mixed in reeds and straw to prevent cracking. Every material came from within arm's reach, guaranteeing that when the house aged, it aged in rhythm with its surroundings. Even the grass atop the roof was the same that grew nearby, ensuring color and texture blended naturally. This fluency between builder and landscape meant no two shelters were identical. Each was a unique response to the conditions that created it. The earth lodge in the plains, the pit house in the plateau, the hogan in the desert, all spoke the same language through different dialects. The result was architecture without arrogance. Homes didn't impose themselves. They participated. Every detail, from orientation to material, worked in quiet collaboration with the world that sustained it. In these designs, survival wasn't separate from the landscape. It was part of its vocabulary. Modern architecture celebrates visibility. Glass towers, sprawling suburbs, and concrete grids, all built to stand apart from their surroundings. Yet, in the process of reaching higher and shouting louder, we've drifted from the principle that once defined survival: understanding before construction. The invisible shelters of the past hold lessons that modern builders, for all their technology, rarely practice. Today's homes rely on machinery to correct design flaws. Air conditioners to cool sealed boxes, furnaces to heat thin walls, and filters to fix air that no longer moves freely. Energy replaces awareness. The result is comfort that costs, stability that depends on constant input. When power fails, even the strongest houses falter. Compare that to a pit house or earth lodge. It required no electricity to breathe, no insulation beyond what the land already offered. Its temperature held steady because the design worked with natural physics. Dense walls for heat retention, domed ceilings for circulation, vents positioned where air naturally wanted to flow. The builders didn't control the environment. They cooperated with it. This is the lesson modern construction lost: awareness before ambition. The early shelters proved that a building could regulate itself, heal itself, and even vanish back into the soil when its time was done. They required no demolition, no waste, and left behind only what the land could reuse. Some architects today are rediscovering this truth. They study earth-integrated designs, solar orientation, and natural ventilation, all ideas perfected long before the word sustainability was invented. The technology may be new, but the principle isn't. The invisible shelter reminds us that progress isn't about conquering the environment. It's about knowing it well enough not to fight it in the first place. The future of architecture might begin exactly where it was buried, beneath the ground, silent and waiting. Centuries ago, families stepped into doorways barely wider than their shoulders and vanished beneath the earth. There, surrounded by soil and silence, they built a life that endured through winters that shattered everything above ground. What they created wasn't just shelter. It was proof that understanding your world can be stronger than conquering it. Today, their homes lie hidden beneath fields and forests, their roofs long returned to the earth. Yet the idea remains alive in every design that values balance over excess. Architects with satellites and sensors are relearning lessons once taught by the curve of a hill and the depth of a frost line. The future of sustainable living might not be in towering cities or gleaming glass, but in the quiet shapes that disappear into the landscape and still manage to keep us safe. The invisible shelters remind us that strength doesn't need attention, and progress doesn't always stand tall. Sometimes it hides, waiting for the world to notice again. Each mound, each trace beneath our feet is a voice from the past, saying we already had the answers. We just stopped listening.